Hello, History 325. My name is Latoya Taylor, and I'm bringing you a presentation of my primary sources for my paper. The focus of my paper will be on racism and how that has changed in the immigration process, beginning back in 1860 all the way through. My last source is from 1969, and it talks about the different ways that they experienced racism when they first came here. My first source is Lin Singh, who immigrated to the U.S. in 1860. He was a merchant who was subjected to the Chinese police tax that was passed in 1862. He sued and claiming that the Chinese police tax was harmful and that they should not be subject to that and that it was racist. And he actually eventually won. It went all the way to the California Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court stated that the Chinese police tax was unconstitutional and therefore was not valid, so that his money should have been returned along with everyone else's money who was taken under this tax. After he won the case, he was subsequently murdered by 3 white men, and the court, in that ensuing court case, there were 2 Chinese men who testified against the white men, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that the Chinese gentlemen could not testify against the white men as they were not white and they were not citizens of this country, that only white men or white women could testify against white men. My next source is Elizabeth Wong, who, when she was 9 years old, was sold into slavery/indentured servitude to a family in China by her mother for the price of a coffin for $90, which was the price of a coffin for her father who had died. She was then brought to the United States in 1891 by the family that she lived with, and she ended up being abused by the mistress of the household. However, the gentleman of the household was very kind to her, and he had promised her mother when he purchased her that he would make sure when she came of age that she was married to a gentleman from the same area and the same background as she was, basically a Chinese man from that same area. So at 18, she did escape the indentured servitude and was by being married off. And she talks about how as a child in the U.S., how she was teased and not allowed to go to school because she was Chinese, even though she was living in Hawaii at the time. My next source is Vera Clark Eiffel. She came to the United States in 1921 from Barbados at the age of 7. They got here in January. Her father was murdered in May of 1921 in a dispute over a cricket game. He was hit in the head with a baseball bat. And then after that, her life changed dramatically. Her mother had difficulty finding work here because she was black, and they moved from place to place a lot. Her mother did finally land a job, and she was able to go to school, but she experienced racism at school because she said a lot of the teachers asked her why was she trying to get an education, because she would not be able to use it to get any type of job or do any type of thing. She goes on to talk about how she was not encouraged as a child or given the same opportunities as the other children in her classes. And the last source is a family member who came here, Eric Melville. He came here in 1969 from Guyana, South America, and he was 33 years old. And he talks about how the process, it was a 9-month process to get here. And then when he got here, at first he had difficulty finding a job. He did eventually land a job as a chemical engineer supervisor at Dow Chemical. And he talks about how he experienced a lot of racism from his employees because they felt that A, as a black man, he should not have been able to have that job, and B, he was a foreigner and that he had taken a job from a white man who should have gotten that job. He talks about how things were difficult for him being a supervisor from somewhere else, that he had a lot of employees who in the beginning did not want to take direction from him, did not want to, participate in anything that he had going on. And like I said, the focus of my paper is going to be on how racism in the United States with the immigration process. I think historically, immigration has been seen as a good thing for the U.S., and I'm not saying that it's not, but what I'm saying is that there was a lot of undercurrent racism that went on, and a lot of people are not aware of that. Like, when we think about immigration today, we think about the immigration as far as the Mexican border is concerned, but there's quite a bit of immigration and racism in immigration, even in states that are northern states. I'm originally from Michigan. We have a very large Middle Eastern population, and it's very sad to say that a lot of the Middle Eastern population, especially in the post 9/11 era, has experienced a lot of racism, a lot of retaliation type things, and singling them out. And that is a big concern when you're talking about immigration from any country. And I think that is something that I don't think is going to change anytime soon. And that kind of completes my presentation. I look forward to hearing everyone else's. Thanks.